Good afternoon, Ann and Kevin. Let's get right into discussing your estate plan. It's an area of your financial plan that I want to spend quite a bit of time on because it is going to be an integral part of your financial plan. Um, I've looked over your documents, your statements, the financial things that you've given me, brief history of your relationship. And what I'm recommending to you, Kevin and Ann, is that each of you would create your own individual revocable living trust. When people end up creating trusts, they typically say, oh, this is for old people, and they do this when they're in their 70s and 80s. And that's so far from the truth. When I meet with people and they ask me how old do you have to be to create a trust, I recommend to them, well, if you're married, you have children, and you have large amounts of life insurance, you need a trust. Because, in essence, if something were to happen to you unexpectedly and you're in your 30s, what's the likelihood of your spouse remarrying? And they say, well, that's a pretty good chance. Well, what that means then is that your spouse and her new husband or his new wife is going to come in and enjoy the benefits of your life insurance policies. And then your children stand a very good chance of not inheriting anything. So, in looking at your situation, Kevin and Ann, you have some similarities there. It's not exact, but there are similarities. Um, and when you create your estate plan, it's not something that you're going to be looking at down the road, saying that when we're 85 and 90 and we pass away, this is how we would want our estate to be divided up. And you've mentioned that you would want that to go to Martin and Julius. Well, there's no guarantee that you're going to make it to 85 or 90. So when you're dealing with an estate plan, it's really a short-term horizon. You're coming into it with the idea, gee, if something were to happen to us next year, 2 years from now, or within the next 5 years, unexpectedly, then this is how we would want the assets that are held in our own individual and particular trust to be administered and managed. And so that's what we're going to be addressing. 5 years from now, if things go along normally, no unexpected occurrences, then you're going to come in and you and I are going to take a look at your plan. We're going to take a look at your family dynamics and circumstances, your financial situation, to make sure that the financial plan still accomplishes your goals, desires, and wishes. So, short-term plan that we review every 5 years. Like I had mentioned in the situation with the 30-year-old person, we need to take a look at your situation. So, your relationship, you've been in this relationship about 7 years. You've been married for 2 months. Kevin, I'd need to ask you the question, gee, if something were to happen to you a year from now, what do you think the likelihood is that Anne would remarry? Anne shaking her head saying that she wouldn't, but in all reality, I would say a very good chance that she would end up remarrying. Only 56 years of age at that time. That's really asking a lot of her to go for the next 30, 35 years single and alone. So I would say that there is a very good chance. If that were to occur, then the assets that you have without having the trust, whether they're in joint tenancy or Anne as the primary beneficiary, are going to be spent by that new boyfriend or the new husband, and Anne and he are going to be traveling the world, enjoying retirement, spending your assets. And it would be the same in your situation. If something were to happen to you unexpectedly, and now Kevin ends up receiving the money from the sale of your home, the assets of your stock portfolio, the asset from the sale of your business, and now they're traveling the world enjoying the money that you've spent the last 35 years trying to accumulate. I don't think that's something that either one of you want to see happen. So the beauty of the trust is it comes in and it allows you to put provisions in there that says, okay, Kevin, here's your assets. I have my home, the proceeds from the sale of my vacation property, my IRA and pension accounts would be put into a trusteed IRA, which is going to accomplish the same thing, and any other cash assets that I have. Those are going to be held in trust if something unexpected happens to me, and they're going to be held for Ann's benefit. They're going to be there for her care, her support, her maintenance, maintain her standard of living, and provide her with the monthly income that both of you have indicated that you want to have. But in the trust document, you're going to have a provision that says, however, if Ann were to remarry or cohabitate with either a new spouse or boyfriend, then at that point, any benefits from my trust are going to stop, and those assets are going to flow down to my children, Julius and Martin. You could put in a safety time period in there, or a time to make sure that the relationship between Ann and her new husband works. I mean, they may be married 6 months and then they decide, oh, this isn't what we expected, we're getting a divorce. And if you've already given the assets to Julius and Martin, then Ann's going to be significantly harmed by not having that income that you previously had provided for her. So you may want to put in a safety valve or time period there, a test period, saying that the assets are going to remain in trust for a period of a year, maybe 18 months, that if Ann does get divorced or the relationship doesn't work out, then the benefits from your trust can restart. But if it hits that 12-month or 18-month period and they're still married, still happily married, everything works, then at that point the assets would be distributed to Martin and Julius. And the same thing would go for you. In your trust, you would put the assets from the sale of your home, the assets from the sale of your business, your stock portfolio, and you would direct that these assets are to be held in trust for Kevin's benefit, his care, support, maintenance, maintain his standard of living, provide him with that monthly income that you've indicated that you want. However, if Kevin were to remarry, then any benefit from your trust would stop and your assets would flow to your aunt or nieces and nephews or whoever you felt like you would want to receive those assets. So you can see it adds that protection so that the assets don't become abused or they don't go places where you do not want them to go. If you put these provisions in place and everything goes along as you're planning, you stay married, you become 70, 75 years of age, you can come in and say, you know what, now in reviewing the trust document, we had those provisions in place regarding a remarriage, but you know what, we're past that now, we're pretty sure that we're going to spend the rest of our lives together, and we feel like that we don't need those provisions in there. You can amend the trust, make the change, and things are great. So that's the beauty of the trust, that you can change it as your family situation changes and circumstances in your family relationship change. But at the same time, it adds precautions and safety valves so that if the unexpected were to happen, you're protecting those assets from someone else coming on the scene and receiving that benefit. I can tell you at least twice, 3 times a month, I have people coming into me and saying, oh yeah, my dad passed away and he had all this money, and my mom 5 years later ended up remarrying, and now she's passed away, and here all of the assets are owned by this stepfather, this new guy, and he's spending money and giving money to his kids, and he's basically told us that we're not going to receive anything, and we know he didn't bring anything into the marriage. These were my dad's assets from real estate investments, but now he's enjoying them and passing them out to his children for them to enjoy also. And I see that repeatedly coming in time and time again. So I'm making that recommendation to you. The players in the trust, Kevin, you and Ann are going to be the creators of your trust document. I'm recommending that you hire a professional trustee to administer the trust. That would be the financial institution. We would be there to act as your advisor, your counselor, the asset manager, making sure that your financial plan remains true to its intent. And then we can help and advise you in any changes that need to be addressed down the road. With that being said, I want to know if there's any questions that you have, anything that we need to discuss further. There are other documents that I want to talk about, but that's the way that the trust would impact or deal with your current financial situation. And I do think this would be in your best interest, particularly because the relationship is fairly new and young. And I would hate to see something happen to where you come back in, the survivor of either of you come back in and say, oh man, I wish we would have done that. You can always change the document going forward as long as you're both are still living. But if one of you are no longer in the picture, I don't want you to have any regrets.